You know what's wild? We've created an entire generation of adults who are absolutely obsessed with their childhood wounds. And I'm not talking about acknowledging pain, I'm talking about making it your whole personality, your origin story, your excuse for why at 37 years old, you still can't show up for your own life. Let me be clear, I'm not here to tell you your pain wasn't real. If your childhood sucked, it sucked. If your parents were emotionally unavailable, controlling, or straight up toxic, that happened. I'm not denying your experience, but here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Your trauma is not a permission slip to stay stuck. And yet, that's exactly what we're doing. We've turned therapy language into a get-out-of-jail-free card. I have abandonment issues, so I can't commit. I'm a people pleaser because of my parents, so I can't set boundaries. I have anxiety because of my childhood, so I can't take risks. We've learned all the right words: attachment styles, inner child, nervous system, regulation, and we're using them to build the most sophisticated prison of victimhood the world has ever seen. Here's what nobody's telling you: knowing why you do something doesn't mean you get to keep doing it. Understanding your patterns is not the same as changing them. And blaming your parents for who you are today is just another way of saying you don't believe you're capable of becoming someone different. Think about it. When you were 5 years old, you had no power. None. You couldn't choose your environment, your parents' behavior, or how safe you felt. You were completely at the mercy of the adults around you. And if they failed you, that was on them. 100%. But you're not 5 anymore. You're not powerless. You're not trapped in that house, in that dynamic, in that version of reality. The only person keeping you there now is you. And I get it. I really do. It's so much easier to point at your past and say, see, this is why I am the way I am. Because if it's your parents' fault, you don't have to do the terrifying work of taking responsibility for your life. You don't have to face the fact that you're choosing every single day to stay small, to play it safe, to repeat the same patterns that keep you stuck. You get to be the victim. And victims don't have to change. Victims just have to survive. But here's the truth you're not ready to hear. You stopped being a victim the moment you became an adult. The second you had the power to make your own choices, to walk away, to say no, to build a different life, you became responsible. Not for what happened to you, but for what you do next. Your parents didn't ruin you. They shaped you, sure. They gave you wounds, maybe. But you're the one who keeps reopening them. You're the one who keeps telling yourself the same story about who you are and what you're capable of. You're the one who looks at your life and says, well, this is just how I am because of my childhood, instead of saying, this is who I was taught to be, but I can learn to be someone else. Because here's what's really going on. You're not healing, you're explaining. You're sitting in therapy or scrolling through Instagram psychology posts, learning all the language, nodding along, feeling seen, and then going right back to the same behaviors. You're collecting diagnoses and trauma responses like Pokemon cards, and you think that's growth. But growth isn't understanding why you self-sabotage. Growth is stopping, and that requires something most people aren't willing to give: accountability. Not blame, accountability. The ability to look at your life and say, I know where this came from, but I'm the only one who can change it. To stop waiting for your parents to apologize, for the world to be fair, for someone to save you, and to realize that you are the only person coming. You want to know why you're still stuck. It's not because your childhood was hard. It's because you're still living like a child. You're still waiting for permission to take up space, to want things, to choose yourself. You're still operating from a place of I can't instead of I won't. And the scariest part? You know it. Deep down, you know that the person standing in your way isn't your mother or your father or your ex or society. It's you. So here's the real question. Are you going to keep explaining your life? Or are you going to start building it? Because understanding your trauma is step 1. But accountability, that's where the magic happens. That's where you stop being a product of your past and start becoming the architect of your future. And if you're ready to stop outsourcing your happiness and start owning your choices, stay with me. Because what comes next is going to crack you wide open. Let's talk about what accountability actually looks like, because I think we've forgotten, or maybe we never really knew. We've confused it with shame, with being hard on ourselves, with admitting we're broken or bad. But accountability isn't about beating yourself up. It's about waking up to the fact that you have power, real, tangible, life-changing power, and you've been giving it away. Every time you say, I can't help it, that's just how I am, you're giving your power away. Every time you explain your behavior with your trauma, you're handing control of your life to something that happened 20 years ago. And listen, I'm not saying your past doesn't matter. I'm saying it doesn't get to decide. Not anymore. Not unless you let it. Here's what blows my mind. We live in a world where people will spend thousands of dollars on therapy, read every self-help book, follow every wellness influencer, learn every breathing technique and boundary script, and still show up exactly the same. Still anxious, still people-pleasing, still avoiding conflict, still sabotaging relationships, still stuck. And when you ask them why, they'll give you a dissertation on their childhood, but they won't tell you what they're doing differently today. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: knowing your patterns is not enough. Feeling your feelings is not enough. Talking about your trauma is not enough. At some point, you have to act. You have to make different choices. You have to do the thing that scares you. Set the boundary that feels impossible. Walk away from what's familiar and build something new. And that's where most people stop, because action requires accountability. And accountability means you can't blame anyone else when it's hard. Let me give you an example. You know you're a people pleaser. You've known for years. You can trace it back to your childhood. You had to keep the peace, rid the room, make everyone happy to feel safe. Got it. Beautiful self-awareness, gold star. But you're still saying yes when you want to say no. You're still overextending yourself. You're still resentful. You're still exhausted. So what's the point of all that awareness if nothing changes? The point was supposed to be this. Now that I know why I do this, I can interrupt the pattern. I can feel the urge to people please and choose differently. I can tolerate the discomfort of disappointing someone because I understand that my worth isn't tied to their approval. But instead, most people stop at the why. They wear it like a badge. I'm a people pleaser because of my childhood trauma. Okay. And what are you going to do about it? This is where the real work begins. And it's not soft. It's not gentle. It's not about affirmations and bubble baths. It's about looking at your life and saying, I am actively choosing the things I say I hate. You're choosing the job that drains you. You're choosing the relationship that doesn't meet your needs. You're choosing to stay silent when you want to speak. You're choosing safety over growth, comfort over change, familiarity over freedom. And the reason you're choosing those things? Not because of your parents, because you're scared. And that's okay. Fear is human. But let's stop pretending it's anything else. Let's stop hiding behind trauma language and start telling the truth. I know what I need to do. I'm just too afraid to do it. That's accountability. That's honesty. That's the beginning of actual change. Because here's what happens when you start taking accountability. You stop being a passenger in your own life. You stop waiting for someone to fix you, save you, validate you, give you permission. You realize that nobody's coming. There's no magical breakthrough, no perfect therapist, no amount of healing that's going to make this easy. You just have to decide, and then you have to act over and over and over again. And yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're doing it wrong. You're going to disappoint people. You're going to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. But you know what's worse? Spending the rest of your life explaining why you never became who you wanted to be. Sitting at 50, 60, 70 years old, still talking about your childhood like it's the reason you never took a risk. Never set a boundary, never chose yourself. That's the real tragedy. Your parents didn't ruin your life, but if you keep blaming them, you will. Because every moment you spend pointing backward is a moment. You're not moving forward. Every ounce of energy you put into resentment is energy. You're not putting into creation. And I promise you, your parents are not sitting around thinking about how they messed you up. They're living their lives. So why are you still living in reaction to them? You want freedom? Take responsibility. Not for what was done to you, but for what you do next. Not for the hand you were dealt, but for how you play it. Because the moment you stop needing your parents to change, to apologize, to see you, the moment you stop outsourcing your healing to anyone outside yourself, that's when you become unstoppable. That's when you take your life back. And if that feels harsh, good. You don't need another person coddling you. You need someone telling you the truth. You are capable of so much more than you're allowing yourself to believe. But you'll never know it until you stop hiding behind your story and start writing a new one. So let's bring this home. Because if you've made it this far, you're either pissed off or you're finally ready to hear what you've been avoiding. And both of those reactions, they're good. They mean something's shifting. Here's the shift. You're not broken. You never were. You're just operating from an outdated system, a system built by a child who didn't have choices. But you're not that child anymore. You have choices now. You have power. And the only thing standing between you and the life you actually want is your willingness to stop explaining and start choosing, let's be honest about what's really happening. You're not stuck because of your trauma. You're stuck because staying stuck is easier than changing. It's easier to say I can't than to do the hard thing. It's easier to blame your parents than to admit that you're scared of failing, of being judged, of not being enough. It's easier to stay small and safe than to take up space and risk being seen. And I get it. I really do. Change is terrifying, but so is waking up at 60 and realizing you never tried. You know what nobody talks about? The cost of not taking accountability. We talk about the cost of toxic parents, of childhood wounds, of generational trauma, but we don't talk about the cost of staying in victim mode. The relationships you lose because you can't show up, the opportunities you miss because you're too afraid to fail, the life you don't live because you're waiting for someone to give you permission. That cost, that's on you. And I'm not saying this to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because you deserve better. You deserve a life where you're not constantly at war with your past, where you're not explaining every decision through the lens of what happened to you, where you're not shrinking yourself to fit into a story that doesn't serve you anymore. You deserve to be free. But freedom doesn't come from understanding your trauma. It comes from choosing yourself anyway. So what does that look like practically? It looks like setting a boundary even though it feels impossible. It looks like saying no without a long explanation. It looks like ending a relationship that's not serving you, even though you're scared of being alone. It looks like taking the job, starting the business, moving to the new city, trying the thing, even though you're terrified. It looks like sitting with the discomfort of change instead of running back to what's familiar. It looks like choosing growth over comfort, over and over again, until it becomes who you are. And here's the beautiful, brutal truth. Nobody's going to do this for you. Not your therapist, not your partner, not your best friend. You're the only one who can decide to stop living in reaction to your past and start living in creation of your future. You're the only one who can take responsibility for your happiness, your choices, your life. And the moment you do, everything changes. Because when you take accountability, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and you become the author of your story. You stop waiting for life to happen to you and you start making it happen. You stop blaming your parents, society, politics, the universe, and you start asking, what can I do? What can I control? What can I change? And that shift from powerless to powerful, that's where transformation lives. Your parents gave you a starting point, but you decide the destination. Your childhood shaped you, but you get to reshape yourself. The wounds are real, but they don't have to be your identity. You get to decide who you are, and you get to decide that every single day, with every single choice. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for healing to feel easy. Stop waiting for the perfect moment when you finally feel ready. You're ready now. You've always been ready. You just have to choose it. Choose accountability. Choose yourself. Choose the life you actually want, instead of the one you've been settling for, because it's familiar. And if you're sitting here thinking, okay, but where do I even start? Start here. Pick one thing, one pattern, one behavior, one choice, and do it differently. Not perfectly, just differently. Set one boundary, say one no, take one risk, and then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that, because change doesn't happen in one giant leap. It happens in 1,000 small decisions to stop being who you were and start becoming who you want to be. Your trauma isn't the problem. It never was. The problem is that you've made it your whole story. And as long as you keep telling yourself that your past defines you, it will. But the second you decide that your past is just the prologue, not the whole book, that's when you become the author. That's when you take your power back. That's when you stop surviving and start living. So here's my challenge to you. Stop outsourcing your happiness. Stop blaming your childhood for who you are today. Stop hiding behind your trauma and start owning your choices. Because you're not a victim anymore. You're a grown adult with the power to create the life you want. And the only question left is, are you going to use it? The door's open. You just have to walk through it. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. This is Human Wave, where awakened minds rise into a life of wholeness and fulfillment.